Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm your host, Steve Carroll. I'm sure you'll all be delighted to know that Matt is joining us this week. He's once again made a welcome return. So, evening, Matt. How are you?
Evening. All good here. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. Apart from when the Swans get mentioned usually, but unfortunately we're going to have to talk about them again tonight. So
it's a bit of a pisser when your whole podcast is about them, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, and there wasn't a podcast last week, so yeah, I guess we're obliged to do one this week. So I'm going to start off actually by talking to you a little bit about Luke Williams, because obviously I think myself and Andy recorded an episode just after he was fired, and we went into that, but obviously we haven't had you on the podcast really since he lost his job. So yeah, just your thoughts really on what happened, and I'm fairly sure that you think it was the right decision, but yeah, just in your words really about how you see the situation.
Yeah, I think it was the writing was on the wall. I think there were a few factors which probably contributed to it. There was the constant throwing the players under the bus. There was the West Brom links, which he didn't deny out of hand and let linger for a week or two, which sent the fan base into a bit of a frenzy. But since then, the results just haven't been coming at all, and nothing changed really, despite the protestations that we got to be better, we're going to learn our lessons. We still had the same thing every week. We had the same prescribed subs on the same minutes, and I look, from all I've seen and heard about him, he's a fantastic, really likable bloke, and he absolutely loves his job, and he's a really affable character. But you did get the feeling towards the end of his tenure here that he might have just been out of his depth, and that just didn't know really how to turn things around.
Yeah, I think on the previous podcast, really, we were all, I think myself and Andy were saying similar things. Really, I mean, there was sympathy with him in terms of what was going on behind the scenes, but at the same time, I mean, there was so many bad defeats and to poor sides, and like you say, the fact that he'd thrown the players under the bus, not really taking any responsibility, it just felt like the end. I think really, didn't it? And it was no shock, was it, when the decision was made? It felt like it was a matter of time, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, and I think, and looking at it now, they probably give him 3 games too many. And I know that if you had sacked him 3 games earlier, it would have looked incredibly harsh. But we had we look like we might be get away with it this year. There was a time where we looked seriously like, where's the next win going to come from? The longer they give Luke Williams, obviously we know the horrendous run of fixtures that are around the corner, and what we have to face in the next month or so. And you're looking at that thinking, if we don't make a change before them, then you can't expect anyone to come in and get a result in some of those games. So you really are worried then where the points are going to come from just to steer us over the line. The decision was made, and thankfully it looks like there was enough time and breathing space in that to get things right. Well, I think what was perhaps most peculiar was that they appointed his former colleague just days before sacking him.
Yeah,
in Richard Montague. Yeah,
that was a surprise, wasn't it? I think but I think we should all be within reason, maybe saying nothing surprises us too much down the Swans these days, unfortunately, shouldn't we as well? But yeah, in general, I think you are right with that, and it has been interesting. I mean, we'll go on to talk about the game shortly, but I mean, Alan Sheehan obviously has been in charge. He said he's going to be in charge until the international break. I don't see that as a major shock, really. I mean, when we've made since this regime have come in, when managers have changed, it does feel like it's taken quite a while to make a decision about which way we're going to go. So it feels similar again, and obviously because we've picked up a couple of results, there's probably less urgency now as well, isn't there, to do it? So it doesn't look like much is going to happen in the near future. And if I'm honest, I'm pretty stumped as to who is going to be the next manager as well. It doesn't feel like there's an obvious route that they're going to go down at the moment, does it?
Yeah, I mean, where do you start with all that? I mean, look, we are one of those clubs that needs to think a bit differently. We've completely hamstrung ourselves with some horrendous deals, which we're still paying the price for, and some of them have still got a year or so to run. So we just look staring down the barrel at PSR there and thinking, well, actually, we can't afford to do a great deal of business, so we need to be cleverer than others in the transfer market in order to thrive. And with that, appointing Montague is a welcome move. I can't give any sort of knowledge about his previous work and how he seems to be very data driven, which seems to be a favour of the current regime in that they rely heavily on data for signings. If that works, then great. I mean, it's a mixed bag, I think, in terms of what we've seen so far. But there have been some good finds in there. In terms of what we've done in the last year or so, whilst using the new scouting model. I just hope Montague gets given the power to make those footballing decisions, being that he's been in football for a good few years now, and seeing how the game works and hopefully having his own contacts in the game to be able to, know agents and know chairman and stuff like that, and be able to, have those quiet words on the side, because let's be honest, the board that we have at this club haven't got a clue, and that's in the nicest way possible. It's just through a complete lack of experience and a complete naivety from the chairman and those around him. So I think we need football brains at the top level. Now, they may have been burned with the Paul Watson scenario. They put a lot of faith in Watson, give him the power, and we're paying the price of that today. I've spoken to you about this before. The idea about giving the director of football the power that Watson had was a good decision. It was just that they give it to the wrong person. Now, that's not to say that Montague's got all the answers, but he seems to be at least performing the role which he was doing previously at his previous club. So at least you're giving someone something that they know what they're doing about. Whether he's good or not, that'll come out in the wash. But I hope they give him some power to do his job, and he's not just a face to the regime that's working behind him, making all the shots, and Andy Coleman's there peering over his shoulder every 2 minutes. I mean, it's not going to work. For a manager, I think it's anyone's guess, isn't it? Maybe we need to be a creative in that field as well. We need to stop turning out League One managers, because we keep bringing in managers from like a lower club or someone else who may look like they have promise. But I've heard mentioned a couple of times, that we are considering looking abroad, and maybe someone. Listen, one of my favourite managers of the Swans, Graham Potter, we brought him in from Oster Sons, and he had already achieved, but obviously in a lesser division, brought him over here, give him his chance, and he's not looked back, and he's done great things for himself since then. And both of our favourite managers have had a continental flair to them, Steve, haven't they? I mean, you've got Martinez, Laudrup, they've all given that little bit of a different taste on the game that we love. And I wouldn't be against that, but please don't ask me for names, because I think, this is the first appointment in quite some time where I literally haven't got any clue where to look. I wouldn't be against them looking abroad, but they have to do their thorough research on that, and not just appoint someone because he's got a fancy name.
Well, that feels like a bit of the problem, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't feel like there's an obvious route necessarily to go down here. But I mean, like you say, you're saying don't ask you for names, but the problem is I don't want to ask the club for names, because my faith in them is so low based on the decisions.
This is why. Isn't this why Montague needs to be front and centre of that recruitment process?
Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it? I certainly hope that he is a better fit than Paul Watson is. I mean, it's it does feel like an important appointment, this next one, doesn't it? Because we have been going backwards. There's real disconnect here, which we'll go on to talk about, with the fact that let's just say that they've shied away from the spotlight again behind the scenes. This, you do feel as if they get this one wrong, we could be going down in the near future. That's my real concern.
Well, yeah, because the squad's getting weaker year on year. There's players that have left that we felt like, okay, was about, the right time and stuff like that. Or the club have got good money for them, which as fans, you have to understand every club, barring maybe Real Madrid in the world, is a selling club. And so you have to accept that as part of football. What you hope to do then is you have the right infrastructure in place to then go and reinvest that money. And certain clubs do that. You look over the last 5-10 years or so of the Brightons and the Brentfords and stuff, and they've had incredible amounts of success because they bring in talents for cheap through a fantastic recruitment scouting network, and then they'll go and sell that player for 10 times the value 18 months later, and then that gets reinvested. Both clubs have done that, and both clubs were playing their trade in this division not that long ago. So it can be done, but as we've said so often on this podcast, the changes need to happen from the top down. There's no point. I thought many times this season you could have put a prime Messi on the pitch for the Swans and he'd struggle to get a sniff because everything around him is broken. When you look at the manager isn't allowing his players to express themselves, so that wouldn't work. You've got a board that doesn't back a manager in a transfer market. You've got a recruitment team that doesn't have a clue what sort of wages to offer what player, panics on deadline day year after year after year. So until you sort it from the top, everything below it's going to be a mess. And I think that's where I'm hopeful that the Montague thing starts a repair from that. And it really needs to be, we need to get rid of the ego trips in the boardroom and start giving people the power to do their jobs and not oversee everything and kind of want to have your finger in so many pies, because with all due respect, you don't have that experience and knowledge of the football game to be able to succeed in that. So I think you need to put the right people in charge and trust them to do their jobs.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to the fact that obviously we were meant to have a fans forum, it got cancelled because of Luke Williams' sacking, which I think we have to be realistic and say that that forum couldn't really take place the day after, when a manager was gone. So I do accept that. I don't accept the fact that I hadn't been all season to that point. That's a different argument. But then this, obviously, it got rearranged for Monday the 3rd of March, which I thought was, fair enough. They were doing it within a couple of weeks. And then on Saturday, we found out that was also getting canned because of the fixture schedule, which obviously, clubs don't play games today in the, in March, as we know. And, no date for a rearranged one. It's not good enough, is it? From my point of view, the people behind the scenes, they are shying away from us. They've said, haven't they, that they want to reconnect with the fans. Andy Coleman said that in an interview with Wales Online. They're hiding from us. They will not face any scrutiny. It's not good enough, is it?
So the 17th of February, the club announced that the fans forum was being rearranged for Monday the 3rd of March. On the 14th of February, 3 days prior, the Preston game was rearranged for Tuesday the 4th. So 3 days before they rearranged the last one, they already knew the Preston game was the day after. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up that this has been sprung on them. Like, I've looked at it online and the dates just say that the club already knew they were playing the next night. So that can't be a reason. For me, it's simple. There were three main avenues of attack, and I'm thinking back last year's fans forum where Paul Watson got it both barrels. There were three new avenues of attack for this one from the fans who were disgruntled. There was the recruitment, the January farce, the absolute joke that has gone on at this club that happens year after year after year, where we end up in a transfer deadline day panicking, looking at who we can get through the door. That Leighton Orient guy, Galbraith, is it, that we tried to get on deadline day when we just let Azim Abdullah go to them 2 weeks earlier, and we didn't have the foresight to try and, it just pisses me off, because it is just this club have no kind of, if you like the guy and you think you want to, pursue that in the future, even if it's something, we were going to do it in the summer, but another deal fell through. Well, if you're going to do it in the summer, you encompass that into the Azim deal anyway, even if you were going to loan the guy back to them.
There's also the thing as well of like, surely you only sell Grimes if you've got things lined up. So they could have gone, okay, we think this offer's okay. So then they should have gone to Leyton Orient and said, look, we actually now want this player, if that was him that they wanted. But as usual, they didn't do these things. And yeah, like you say, we ended up with that shit show, didn't we, on deadline day for the umpteenth time, which we're also sick of.
When they got Luke Williams then saying afterwards that Andy Coleman rocked up, I don't know, 3-4 days before deadline day and found out that none of the recruitment was done at the level that he thought it was at. I mean, this is, it's ridiculous, isn't it? There's no communication, there's no accountability. The fact that situation was allowed to happen, if that happened at non-league level, you'd think that's a bit pathetic. If it's happening at championship level, head should roll. It's an absolute joke. It's an absolute joke that if that's what happened, that it was allowed to happen, is absolutely farcical. The three avenues of attack, Steve, were the January transfer window mess with the recruitment side, Luke Williams. So those two have been resolved, or seemingly resolved. And the third one was Andy Coleman. And the only one that's left standing in that three-pronged attack is Coleman. And Coleman does not want to sit there and take dog's abuse for 3 hours. Doesn't want to. He wants to say he'll front up and stuff like that. And by all accounts, he'll meet you one-on-one and stuff and chat things over. But he doesn't want the publicity of having, hundreds of fans sitting there saying, what are you doing for hours on end? Because there's no defence to it. You can't repeat the same excuses he made a year ago, which was, I arrived at this club and the scouting network was non-existent. We had nothing here. We've built it all up now. That doesn't wash with what we just saw in January, does it?
No, that's the problem, isn't it? People are fed up. It's as simple as that. We've heard these things time and again, and it's people are judging on actions, aren't they? Which is what Andy did say for us to do, and unfortunately, the actions are not very good. So, yeah, it's just deeply frustrating, and there's just a disconnect there, as we've said for a long time. It just gives the example, doesn't it, of what the disconnect is like, and it's not going to change unless they themselves are willing to make drastic changes. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like that's going to happen, does it? Which is a real shame, and we're going to continue to go backwards, is what it feels like, which is so frustrating because we worked so hard over a long period for us to turn the tide, having had a very unsuccessful time really through the the late 80s, 90s, and until the point where we moved to the stadium really. So it is very disappointing and frustrating, isn't it? But I mean, I suppose we can catch up one straw in the shorter term at least, whereas the first game after Williams was fired, obviously Sheehan was in charge. I mean, I'm not a fan of his. I don't want him to have the job, but I do have to say that there was an improvement against Blackburn, and obviously we did have a good win, didn't we? Which was, much needed and refreshing to a point, because so far this year has been largely miserable, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of negativity around Sheehan. Obviously, his links with Watson, Nathan Jones. There's links there which Swansea fans like to disassociate themselves from. But where we are at the moment, we need to acknowledge that we need to be a championship club next season. That is fundamental to the short-term future of this football club. We can't afford to drop down into League One. Last time he took over on interim, it wasn't always pretty, but he got some vital results to steer us to safety. And 2 games in, 4 points, no goals conceded. It looks like potentially he could do the same again here. And it's great for the club because what it does is it buys them time. If we lose against Blackburn and we lose against Preston, we're going to get an appointment in before the international break, or certainly before we return from the international break. We're going to rush that appointment. We're going to make sure that everything's running 100 miles an hour and someone's in here, because then we're panicking. we could yet be a League One club next year. Things are not going well. Things haven't improved after Williams' sacking. Counterpoint to sacking Williams after the horrendous run of form we had, by the way, and not have any names or anyone ideas lined up for who we were going to appoint. That's another question for another day. But the fact is, Sheehan has taken the role on an interim basis, and he looks like he's steadied the ship again, which allows the club to take a breath. It looks like now we're probably only one result from being fairly comfortable. I mean, I think we're already almost there. We'll be 10 or 11 points clear with 11 games left. Look at the rate of points that the teams below us are picking up. They're not picking them up very quickly at all. There's a lot of teams that threaten flatter to deceive down there. So I think, we're probably one result or so away from relative safety. That gives us time then to not panic signing. You just mentioned 10 minutes ago about the next appointment being crucial. It feels like we say this every year now, doesn't it? But we have what seems to be a new board that are driven to get this club upwards. They have the finances to do so. We're hamstrung by PSR with horrendous decisions we made before, but we could, in time, utilise those extra cash flow that we have at the club now to better ourselves. What we need to do first of all is get the parts in place to allow that to happen. So if we can make that, if we can make Sheehan can keep us safe, and then that means we allow us a little bit more time to appoint a manager. And if that waits until the summer, then so be it. I don't think any of us expect anything to happen this year good for the Swans at this point. The most important thing is that the worst doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the point of view of that, we're very unlikely to go down, I would say, based on, there's a nice little gap there. And the other positive is we don't play Cardiff again. So, we could take those two things, because it's far too early to face them again after that absolute shocker, however, 6-7 weeks ago, whatever it was. But, I mean, to be fair, against Blackburn, we were better. And I mean, we didn't have as much as the ball as I probably would have liked. I mean, we've definitely had you could argue maybe too much of the ball in some games because of just overplaying it in general. But we just seem to be a bit more effective, didn't we? We created far more chances than what we have done in a lot of games. And I mean, scored some nice goals as well. I mean, I look at the second goal in particular from Pert Harris, and I mean, it wasn't a huge chance really, but I mean, he did really well dribbling with the ball and then got in, and it was a great finish, for example, into the corner off the post. And just we saw things that, did get us off our seats, I suppose, a little bit, probably far more than we have done for a long time. So it was actually quite an enjoyable game, really, wasn't it? Far more than what we've seen for a while. And I suppose it sometimes happens, doesn't it, when a manager goes and you've been on a bad run, maybe, the pressure lifts a bit and you see a different team.
Yeah, but and also there was a tactical tweak as well, wasn't there? It wasn't just the case of, I feel like the aim was to play more positive with the ball, and move the ball through the lines quicker, and that means that where we normally would have made 7 or 8 passes, we were making 2, but we were actually getting the ball much further up the pitch. And the beauty of doing that as well is it allows you to catch players out of position, create overloads, create spaces, and create chances. It infuriated me to death to see us topping all the statistical charts and anyone going, oh, look at those numbers. We're massively underperforming, blah, 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 because our numbers say we should be here, we should be there. Well, actually, you're watching the games, you're thinking all these passes sideways and stuff. And you could look at that and go, we're struggling, we need a creative player. Well, I'd argue creative player doesn't really solve so many of these problems, because unless you're going to give it to that player as soon as we win it, so you win the ball in the defensive third and straight up to the final third to kind of quick pass into midfield, then get it to the winger or something like that, and he's running at his man. If you start doing that, then you'll create chances. But we weren't doing that. We were taking the extra touch, we were going backwards and sideways, and and that meant then that by the time we ventured into the opposition half, we were then playing against 11 men behind the ball. Incredibly difficult to find a hole. So I think there was a bit of a tweak in that as well. We didn't see as much of the ball, but I think there's a No, I wouldn't call it so much as a division, but there's a whole spectrum of a fan base here in the Swans where some people are very, very, very possession based, and they're very like, well, I mean, you've seen them all. That's asking, bring Russell Martin back and stuff like that, and that's one back and stuff, and that's what the style of football they want to see. I'd argue there was more chance of Russell Howard coming to this club than Russell Martin coming back, but I think his style of play was possession, possession, possession. I think the other side of it is this kind of like, oh, we can't ever go anywhere near the hoop ball thing. And I think everyone in the Swans fan base would kind of agree they don't want to go down that route. But I think there's extremities at either end of that. And the reality is this much fabled, much maligned Swansea way bollocks that we keep talking about is neither. It's somewhere close to possession, close to heavy possession, but actually it's also effective. It's also playing with pace. It's also playing on a counter-attack. It's running at players and taking risks and taking chances whilst creating opportunities to do so by overloading. We talked about the Swansea Triangle so many years ago and stuff like that. It was able to create those overloads and create opportunities where you wouldn't have had them before. So stylistically, I think we need to see what we want to do as well, because what we did against Blackburn was move the ball a lot quicker, a lot more positive, and even to a lesser extent, perhaps for the first 15 minutes of the Preston game as well. Of course, that game it didn't really continue that way, but there are shoots of optimism around. I think you just need to decide where we want to fall as a football club, stylistically.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you say, really. I think sometimes the Swansea way probably does mean different things to some people, if you know what I mean. For us, I think it was always more possession with purpose, wasn't it, as opposed to just having the ball to starve the opposition. I mean, it's never been that for me. I think you do want to have more of the ball, but you're probably looking to have maybe about 55, 60% possession as opposed to 70. I think sometimes when you're around the likes of 70, it's just because you've got the ball in safe areas. You're not really doing anything with it. But the whole point of having the ball is to play rather than just to keep it. So, yeah, it's, I think certainly you need to, that should be what we're bearing in mind. And I mean, as you say, there's no chance Russell Martin's going to come back anyway. I mean, that his relationship with the club is over. Whereas I know I got no problem with him and no beef or nothing like that. Do I think he'd be the right man? I'd have to say no. I would say. I mean, they're more than capable of appointing someone worse than him. I would also say that.
Yeah.
But so it wouldn't be a disaster, I think, if they brought him back. But I do think as well that we probably need to look for somebody else. That would be my take on it. But we'll wrap up by talking about last night's game at Preston. I mean, we were second best. I think we have to admit that much, don't we? I mean, I'm very pleased with the result. I mean, we just need to keep the points tally ticking over, really. I mean, in terms of style of play, I think as much as I want that, I think I'm trying to look in more of a shorter term at the moment. But, I think it was the type of game where I'll take the draw. But, I mean, there were not many positives. And it did sort of show why I think Sheehan shouldn't have the job, really, because, we were outclassed, I would say, by a very average Preston side. And, that's not a good sign in general, is it?
Yeah, it wasn't one for the purists, was it, Christ? I think it was a game that as the game wore on, I felt more and more happy with just, getting out of Dodge, take the point, and we'll just pick ourselves up. And yeah, I completely agree with you. I think we're at the point now where we're just thinking this is for us 10, 11 games now, just to make sure we finish in that boring mid-table obscurity kind of, position where you just don't really have anything to go for in the last 3 or 4 games of the season. And, for large chunks of the season, we would dream of being in such a position because of the way things have gone. So, if it does happen, we have to take it and be pleased with it, because I think if Sheehan picks up points, like I said a little earlier on, if Sheehan picks up points at the rate he has in the first couple of games, then it means we're going to be, comfortable, and that's all we can hope for. And if he doesn't get the job, I'd be quite happy for him to keep hold of the reins whilst we look for the right man to take over, and at least he'll be a safe pair of hands while we do so and get the next appointment right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, we just need to get the next appointment right, really, don't we? But if I'm honest, I would like somebody to come in before the end of the season, because if, say, they come in after the international break, they still get over half a dozen games, for example, and they can make decisions about players that they want and the players that they don't, rather than coming in the summer with a clean slate and, judge from the start. They may well know within a couple of weeks there's players they don't want, and you can't necessarily shift them. Whereas if you see them in match situations and stuff like that, it does just give you a better chance. I mean, I would look back at
Martinez did it, didn't he?
Yeah, Kenny Jackett as well. Obviously, Martinez replaced. He came in, didn't he, with half a dozen games to go, and it was quite uninspiring, but it did probably make him learn quite a bit. So I do think I would like that to happen.
I mean, if the right man, I mean, of course, the caveat to that is, as long as we don't panic into getting someone in because we would need them to have 6 games. If we have done our round of interviews and we've identified our candidate and we can get him in earlier, then ideal. Obviously, the biggest issue is if we rush and we end up in this position again in 9-12 months' time, then we've learned nothing.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? And you worry about that because we do seem to be going through managers quite quickly now as well, don't we? So, we need to, like I said earlier, we need to get the next one right, really, don't we? So, yeah, it doesn't bear thinking about making more mistakes. But, I mean, we're looking ahead. We've got Middlesbrough at home. We got Watford away, Burnley at home. I mean, you're looking at Burnley in particular as being a challenging game. I mean, they have finally conceded a goal in the league, unfortunately, against a team we can't stand, even though they did still beat them. But that's going to be challenging. I mean, Middlesbrough had been on a wobble. They've won their last couple. They are in the push for the playoffs. I mean, again, it won't be an easy game, and neither will Watford, a similar type of team, really. So, we need to try and get a win in one of these 3, I would say. So, yeah, what would you say our target is? I mean, if we get a win, I think that would be decent, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I probably think that the Borough on the weekend is as good a chance as any in those, because I think we've got to look at the way the players are feeling now. The defence are feeling a little bit more sturdy, like they were at the start of the season, where we looked like we could keep clean sheets, and now that's 2 on the bounce, which is that the first time we've done that? I read. Not sure if I read that somewhere. That's the first time we've kept 2 clean sheets on the bounce. But yeah, something to take pride in and start building on. And of course, with the emphatic win last time out, a feeling that maybe we can be on the front foot at home and create chances and hurt the opposition. So I think if we can carry on from where we left off last time we were down in SA1, then we would be safe as far as I'm concerned. I think we could if we could get a win against Middlesbrough, then I think the only thing with that, from your point of view, and indeed many Swans fans' point of view, myself included, is the calls for Sheehan to get the job on a permanent basis would almost become deafening then. And I think we need to bear in mind that we're looking at the long-term future of the club here, not just someone who can pick up a few results when we need them to.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I see it, really. It's Sheehan he's not the right man to take it. We need different to him. I think without a doubt, he's been part of 2 failed regimes now. So, and as much as some of the results under him in the 2 spells have been all right, the wider performances have not been good. And it would suggest to me that if he got it, he'd be, by the end of the year, he'd be gone. So we can't be going down that route, I think. We need a stronger character to come in here, I think, as well, to, a fresh start, I would say, to make some changes. But I think we'll wrap it up here. A bit of a shorter podcast than usual, but as you can tell, our enthusiasm isn't enormous at the moment. So I think that
At least we showed up, unlike Andy Coleman, eh?
Look, this is the main point. Like, our enthusiasm isn't great, but I know we didn't do a podcast last week. But look, we're fronted up. We are recording. We're giving you something to listen to, and hopefully I can't say you've enjoyed it, because I think that's the wrong word really. But hopefully it's given you something, and yeah, that's it really. But I'm sure we'll see some of you down there at the game on Saturday. Hopefully it'll be more like the Blackburn game than some of the other ones recently. But as ever, thanks for joining us, and bye for now.